Imagine having the time and money to follow your passions and live life on your own terms. Welcome to Podcasting Mastery, where you'll learn the secrets of podcasting your way to a stress-free lifestyle. Let's grab a cool tropical drink and then join James, Kimberly, and the Turtle in the Secret Beach Hut Studio.
Yes, this is James Martell along with Kimberly Juchnowski.
Hello there.
And we are tucked again into the Secret Beach Hut Studio, and we're so glad you've decided to join us today. This week we will be continuing our conversation about developing a lifestyle business so we can all spend less time doing business and more time enjoying our families, more time traveling, and more time doing all of the things that matter to us the most. It's for these reasons we continue to focus on strategies for both developing a passive monthly income stream and passive ways of developing new clients and customers for your business. Kimberly, how are you doing today?
James, I am doing well. How are you doing?
Doing very well, thank you. And I do understand we have a very, very special guest joining us today.
We do indeed. Today we have John Lim joining us. John is the creator and co-host of the podcast series Moving Forward, where, as John says, he speaks with ordinary individuals who take giant leaps to do something extraordinary.
Wow, that sounds great. Now, why don't you do us a favor, push the button, play a little bit of music to set the mood for the show. Now, John Lim describes his own journey as a fun ride through career wanderlust. After practicing law in D.C., John worked with a prominent Fortune 500 company, delivering sales presentations and webinars. John is also a former actor, having acted in productions for the National Geographic Channel, History Channel, and HBO. John is known to many sci-fi fans for his role as young Lieutenant Commander Sulu, opposite the legendary actor George Takei in Star Trek World and Enough and Time. Written by Academy Award-winning screenwriter Michael Reeves and directed by Mark Zicree, the role captured the attention of Hollywood casting director April Webster and led to an audition for a co-starring role in Star Trek 2009, directed by J.J. Abrams. John, welcome to Podcasting Mastery.
Oh, thank you, James. Thank you, Kimberly. It's great to be on the show.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you, and I'd be remiss not to ask you to share a little bit more about your background before we dive in and talk about your podcast moving forward. So take a minute or three and tell us about yourself and give us a little bit more on what you've been up to and your background.
Absolutely. Well, James, thank you. And yeah, I think you summed up my background pretty well. Career wanderlust is the phrase that really comes to mind when people ask me, can you kind of sum yourself up? And I've done so many different things. So I went to law school. I practiced law in D.C. So, I did litigation. I did corporate work. I did a little intellectual property. And then I decided, you know what? I don't think this is what I want to be doing for the next 50, 60 years. So then I decided I'm going to do something that I think gets me up in the morning. So a friend of mine from law school got me a position with this company, a Fortune 500 company, where I was working in sales, marketing, account management, wearing a lot of different hats. And I loved the aspect of just being able to interact with customers and people and just give presentations. And I also learned how to do webinars and as well as in-person, presentations and meetings. And that actually called back to something that I had discovered in college. I had a little bit of the acting bug preparing to go to law school. I had taken an acting class. And I had been reintroduced to acting as a side hobby. And so I started taking classes in the DC area. And one of the teachers actually was connected to the local casting director. So she started sending me out, for auditions and stuff. And so I started miraculously, and I still don't know how this happened, but I started booking roles for television projects. And as you mentioned, one of the projects that I ended up booking a role on was an independent sci-fi film that later got noticed by a Hollywood producer and Emmy Award-winning screenwriter, as you mentioned. And they actually infused a fairly prominent budget into it. They got George Takei to come to reprise his, original role. And I was playing the younger version of his character. So it was a very meta kind of thing. And it was really, really cool. And they were pitching it. I think the plan was they wanted to pitch it as a pilot for CBS to revive the original 1960s Star Trek. So the actual pilot that we filmed actually had the original look and feel of the 1960s Star Trek with the cheesy sets and the costumes and everything. But
I love that.
But with really updated special effects. Like the special effects were done by a fantastic company out of Florida, the Dave School. And, you know, they're actually a special effects school, and a lot of their students are now working on some of the biggest movies for Disney and doing a lot of the movies for Marvel and things like that. And so it was just a blast. It was the most surreal thing. And I got to know George, and he really encouraged me to think about pursuing acting. So I actually moved to Los Angeles, and I call that my quarter life crisis, where I was actually pursuing acting. And as you mentioned, I was able to, you know, leverage what I had done for World Enough in Time to actually get an audition for the film that J.J. Abrams had rebooted in 2009. So it was just really, really trippy. I decided, you know, not to continue with the acting. I went to, you know, I moved back east. I went to business school. And then I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to leave corporate America. I think it's time for me to kind of start out and figure out what I want to do. And I wanted to kind of tie together everything that I had done. So career wanderlust in a nutshell.
It sounds it's very interesting, and I can't tell you how many we talked to on the show here, how many guests we talked to, just like yourself, who got started on a certain path, usually many times corporate America. You happen to start in law school, and then totally take a right turn into something else, and eventually all of us seem to end up here with a podcast. So if you wouldn't mind, what inspired you to start the Moving Forward podcast?
Oh, it's a funny story behind that, and a lot of people ask me that, and I tell them, I can tell them the date, November 2014. I was at the gym, and I'm an NPR junkie. I love NPR. I stream it all the time. And that particular day, there was something wrong with the app. I wasn't getting a good signal. So I always have to have some sort of audio content, especially when I'm at the gym and on those machines. Otherwise, you just feel like a hamster on a wheel. So I was looking around on the phone, and I saw the podcast icon, and I'd never clicked on it before. I clicked on it, and I just saw, whoa, there's some really cool shows here, and there's some really interesting content here. And so I started looking, and this was right around the time, this was maybe a couple months after I had left my job in corporate America. And I saw a lot of great podcasts, and one of the ones that I stumbled onto was Entrepreneur on Fire with John Lee Dumas, and I just started listening to it, and I said, well, this is fantastic. This is really great stuff. And I just started listening to that and listening to other podcasts. And I think it was maybe a couple of days of listening to podcasts, I got this idea in my head. You know, I've done a lot of things in my career, and I think I can do this. You know, I need to figure out what the technology is and everything. But I think I know a lot of interesting people. I've done a lot of interesting things. And I think this might be something that might be fun. And that was really what sparked the idea for Moving Forward. Was I know a lot of interesting people. And my philosophy was, why am I just going to keep these people to me, right? I know interesting people with interesting stories. I think they should have stories that can be told and shared with an audience. And this was also a way for me to tie in a lot of what I had done in my own career, get a little bit of the performance bug out there, also my experience working in law, corporate America. So I really thought it was just going to be a fun thing to do and tie in a lot of the different aspects of my own career.
I was actually just discussing with James earlier that the diversity in your guest list is huge. Like so many people from different areas and actors and some. So it makes it very interesting. John, could you tell us a little bit more about the premise of your show?
Yeah, absolutely. And basically I had two things in mind, Kimberly, when I was thinking about launching Moving Forward with my co-host, Kristen. You know, we had kind of two goals in mind. Both of us came from corporate America, and we know what that can be like, the cubicle prison, the trading time for money trap. So one aspect of Moving Forward was really to speak to those individuals who have something in them that they're not allowing to share with the world. Something's holding them back. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's imposter syndrome, maybe it's whatever it is. We have so many former colleagues who are still in corporate America, not happy. And there's no job security in corporate America either. I saw so many turnovers and layoffs that it just, I know what kind of a volatile, career path that can be. And I just knew so many people who were creative and had other passions, and yet they weren't pursuing those. They weren't taking it to the next step. So one of the goals I had with moving forward was to interview, so ordinary individuals, but that's almost a head fake, because these individuals are absolutely extraordinary. They've done extraordinary things in their careers, starting a business, becoming actors, working in amazing careers. And so I really wanted to unlock what was their secret for finding and pursuing their passions. How did they overcome the roadblocks that come with doing that? The other thing I had in mind was, I know so many cool people, and this is the only way I'll ever be able to get them in the same room. Right? So I think of it as like a big virtual party. Yeah. And these are the people I would love to have as, if I were throwing a huge party, but, probably not going to happen just because so many people are all over the country or all over the world doing different things. But this is a way for me to kind of connect all of these incredible relationships that I've amassed over my life.
You mentioned a couple things, leaving corporate America, breaking free, stop trading time for money. And of course, podcasting, most of us do this to earn a living or to earn, to make a business out of it. What was your plan when you started the Moving Forward podcast for monetization?
Absolutely. It's funny you ask that, because it's funny, when we started Moving Forward, it really wasn't part of the business that we had launched. So we were doing some consulting, we were doing, we were in the midst of building digital products such as online courses. And it's funny, I didn't actually necessarily think of Moving Forward as part of that. So it really wasn't part of the business funnel to start out with. I just thought this would be really cool and fun to do. As the business has shifted and, we've gone through a lot of micro and some macro pivots, Moving Forward has sort of been the one constant. And I tell people this, the businesses I've started have changed dramatically. But the one thing I feel like I really got right was launching the podcast. So now it's really, coming more into focus that Moving Forward can be a really powerful vehicle, not only to reach an audience, but for people to get to know who I am, and also to introduce people to extraordinary individuals who are doing amazing things with their careers and their businesses.
So how did you come up with the name Moving Forward for your show?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. We batted around a lot of different names, and I think it was just through numerous conversations, we were trying to really crystallize what is the goal of this show, and then people who are in corporate America. So we really started with, who are the ideal listeners? Who are the people that we imagine are going to listen to the show and become the biggest fans? And it was really the people that we once identified with, the people that we were once, the people who are in corporate America. So people who are on their commute, on the train, in the car, maybe not quite excited about where they're headed to work and spending the next 8 or 9 hours. And there's something that's stopping them from taking it to the next level. And then all of a sudden, the phrase Moving Forward just came out. Something that's stopping them from moving forward. And then it was that aha moment, that light bulb, where we decided, why don't we just call it Moving Forward?
Perfect. I see we're actually up against a short break here. We're here with John Lim, co-host of the Moving Forward podcast. When we get back, John will share his story about how his experience as an actor had an effect on him as a podcaster. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
More Podcasting Mastery with James and Kimberly from the Secret Beach Hut Studio after this.
Is your website out of date? Is it mobile friendly? Why not let us design your website, and we'll make sure it looks the way it should on all platforms and devices, including iPhones, iPads, and other smartphones and tablets. We'll even optimize your site for search engines and make it easy for you to share your content and products on social sites such as Facebook and Twitter with built-in sharing features. For more information and to schedule your no-obligation free consultation, go to podcastingmastery.com/website. Once again, that's www.podcastingmastery.com/website.
Would you love to spend less time doing business and more time enjoying your family, more time traveling, and more time doing all of the things that matter to you most? Whether you're looking to develop a passive monthly income stream or you're looking for passive ways of generating new clients and customers for your business, James Martell's free podcasting webinar is the place to start. James Martell, an 11-year podcasting veteran, will show you how to quickly and easily launch a podcast that will impress all who hear it to attract all of the clients and customers you need, and how to do it all in less than 1 hour a week using equipment you already own. Register now for this lifestyle and business-changing webinar at podcastingmastery.com/webinar. We'll see you there. Once again, that's www.podcastingmastery.com/webinar.
Is your podcast getting bogged down because of time or technical issues? Would you prefer to let someone else handle all of the production and technical details? Our virtual producer works remotely from a studio to provide you with production, technical, and creative assistance. Our virtual producer will call you and your guest by phone or Skype, and then record, produce, and upload each episode with SEO-friendly show notes to your website for automated distribution to social media and the major podcast directories. Sound intriguing? Visit podcastingmastery.com/virtual producer to learn more. That's www.podcastingmastery.com/virtual producer.
Now back to Podcasting Mastery from the secret Beach Hut studio.
We are back with John Lim, co-host of the Moving Forward podcast.
John, let me ask you. Kimberly alluded to it just before the break there. How has your experience as an actor had an effect on you as a podcaster?
It's a great question. I think in two ways. Number one, because being an actor, you really have to be fearless. You have to be bold and you have to take a lot of risks. And so for me, being a podcaster now, you get to a point where you quickly run out of people on your phone book that you can ask to be guests. And so you've got to start branching out at some point and start approaching people. And I just didn't have any hesitation to do that. So I think that was one way that being an actor actually helped me. Obviously, there's also the performance aspect. So I've taken a lot of acting classes. I've taken classes in speech and voice. And so I felt like it was just sort of a natural transition for me to go from acting to being a podcaster.
So what's the most interesting thing that's happened to you on your podcast?
Oh, wow. Again, these are great questions. I love your questions. I will share this story. I think, and I still cite this story as one of the biggest moments for me, and I probably will. I got to a point, I think within about 2 or 3 months, as I mentioned, we ran out of people who were quickly running out of really cool people in our phone book. And there was a particular guest that I wanted to get on the show. I'd been an admirer of hers for a long time. Her name is Jen Grisanti, and she was a former CBS network executive, worked with Aaron Spelling on all of these amazing TV shows. And we were separated by, I think, 1 or 2 degrees of separation on Facebook. And I said to myself, oh my gosh, she is someone I would love to have on Moving Forward, because I bet she's got an amazing story. So I'll never forget it. It was I actually invited her to connect on Facebook, just a cold invite, but we had 1 or 2 connections, and she accepted. And I saw it was her birthday. So I actually private messaged her. I said, happy birthday, Jen, really great to connect. By the way, I have this little podcast called Moving Forward. I'd be honored if you'd be a guest. And she just wrote back immediately, I'd be honored to, it'd be great. And that is probably the moment where I realized, wow, this is really, I was just sort of beside myself that, someone of her caliber with her following would agree to be on a show asked by someone who she barely even knew, or didn't know. So, and it was great because, Kimberly, I share that story because since then, we've become really good friends, and I've been able to connect her to other individuals. And we even, she was in DC last summer, where I'm based out of, for a screenwriting conference, and we met up for lunch, and we were just talking about so many different things. So for me, it's really been the relationships that have come out of doing this podcast. And I tell people who are thinking about launching a podcast, I mean, that is one of the biggest gifts that you will get, is just the network, the relationships that you're gonna build off of that.
Definitely. Very cool. It's always nice to hear yes, but from somebody of that caliber, it's even better, and definitely would motivate you to keep going and getting other guests. So let's talk a little bit about that. Once you ran out of your Rolodex of guests that you already had, what other ways do you find your guests?
Yeah, again, great question. And I have the quirkiest ways of getting guests on Moving Forward. So it's just, I don't know what it is, the stars aligning or what have you, but I've had the most interesting ways of people connecting with me. So one of the things that I noticed was that as I was promoting the show through social media, not just Facebook and Twitter, but also on LinkedIn, which I really think, I know LinkedIn is seen as very corporate. It's sort of like people see it as sort of the stodgier brother of Facebook. But I was using LinkedIn a lot to promote the episodes. And unlike Facebook, which I usually use for more personal connections, LinkedIn, I'm always about, let's grow that network. And I started getting invitations from some really interesting people. And so I would start looking at them and see if there was a story behind what they had done in their careers. And so I would just reach out and start asking individuals if they'd like to be on Moving Forward. And then it's just the snowball effect. Guests that I would have on the show would say, "Oh, I should introduce you to this individual." And it's been a combination of different things, And also another thing that I've done is, I see interesting stories, so variety of sources, anything from Fortune magazine to BuzzFeed. If I find interesting stories of interesting individuals, I'll go to their website, I'll learn as much as I can about them, and then contact them. And so I've used a variety of different methods and channels, but really it's just been about seeing where the opportunities are and just being gracious and inviting people, and not expecting a yes, but being very pleasantly surprised when you do get one.
What topics do your listeners find the most interesting?
I think that's a great question. And I think the two that people are finding most interesting. So Kristen and I have very different sides of the show. So I focus much more on the business, career, entrepreneurial side. Kristen does a lot more of the personal development. So the feedback we've gotten has been everything from, this has really helped me as I'm thinking about making a career change, or pursuing a side business or a hobby or a passion and just taking it to the next level. On the other hand, Kristen has gotten comments that, hey, this is really, this guest, went through a lot of what I'm going through now. And that really has been something that I've struggled with, and that was really helpful. So to hear both sides of that has been really it's just very gratifying.
So a lot of listeners, of course, are thinking about starting a podcast. They're maybe not quite sure where to begin, and they're nervous about moving forward, as you would say, with their ideas. Can you take us through the first step that you would recommend to someone who may be starting something such as a podcast, but they're stuck?
Yeah. I'd say a good thing to do would be to just make a list. What are you interested in? What really drives you? And also look at your own experiences from your life and try to connect the two. And so for me and for Kristen, looking at Moving Forward, we both had been in corporate America. We both know what that's like, and we've both been in for a long time. And so we already had in mind that experience. And also being an entrepreneur, wanting to learn. So as much as it is for me to share amazing stories, I learn from every single guest that we have on the show. So think about what you're really, really interested in and just try to niche it down as far as you can. And the other thing I recommend is picture who your ideal listener is. And in fact, what we did, I had Kristen and I had her do this exercise as well, is write out a bio of the exact listener who would be listening to this show and getting inspired by it. So I would say just start with that. Start with the ideation process and just start thinking about what you're passionate about, and then think about the person who you want to speak to. And I have the saying, when I interview someone on the podcast, it's actually 3 people in the room. It's myself, the guest, and the listener. So think about the listener.
Great advice, definitely. I think that many people who are thinking of starting a podcast simply don't do it because they have a lot of self-doubt. I mean, that happens a lot. We see that a ton. On your show, you talk a lot about helping people realize their potential and discovering the extraordinary in themselves. Can you speak to that a couple minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like anything else, anything you want to do. It's like riding a bike. When we're kids, we don't have any fear about trying something, right? And what happens when you fall off a bike? You skin your knee, it may hurt a lot, but what do your parents do? They don't tell you don't ever ride a bike again. They tell you to get right back up and just start, pedaling again, Yeah. I remember, how many scraped knees I went through when I went through that. This is no different than that. Starting a podcast, starting a YouTube channel, whatever it is, writing a blog, there's that initial hump of getting past that fear. And, my advice on that is, do it because it's something you want to do. Don't think about the potential of someone who may not like it. In fact, think the opposite. Think about the person who needs to hear this information. Because if you don't take that step, you're basically denying the person out there, that listener, who may need this information, who may get inspired by it. It may change their life. So that's what I was thinking. Again, my motivation was, I know all these amazing people with these amazing stories. Why am I just going to keep that to myself? There are people out there who can get inspired, as I've been inspired by the people I've connected with. Think about that from that mindset. Have the mindset of, I really, really have something that I'm passionate about, something that I enjoy, and I have something that I really want to share with an audience.
Is there any mistakes that you've made starting your podcast? And if you had to, what would you do? If you had to start over again, what would you do differently?
That's a great question. I think about this one a lot. Yeah, of course, I made tons of mistakes. I don't know that I would change anything, though, because, one of the things that you're going to find is that when you start a podcast, just like when you start anything else, in the beginning, it's going to be a little bit raw, and that's just part of the curve. And one of the things that I really embrace is that I will go back and I will listen to the older episodes, some of which will make me cringe. Mm-hmm. And then I'll listen to the newer episodes. And one of the things I see is, wow, I've come a long way just by doing it. And that's the thing. I don't look at it as, well, I wish I had done X, Y, Z. I embrace the fact that I know what I would have liked to have known back then. The fact that I know it now is what's important, not that I should have done this or should have done that. I think the fact that I did it is the more important thing. And so I don't really look at episode 0 or episode 1 and think, I could have done this better. And maybe I got that from my acting. At some point I just kind of shed that away. I wish I had done this audition a little bit differently, or I wish I had played this a little bit differently in a role. But I kind of look at it all as it's part of the growing process, right? You start out, you stumble, you make mistakes, but that's the way you learn. And, and so I just see it all as steps towards, improving and putting out a product that you're really proud of. And so I don't really look at it as, I wish I had done X, Y, Z. For the longest time, I said, well, I wish I had done it sooner. But even that, I don't really feel that anymore, because the fact is, November 2014, that was the date where I discovered podcasts. And I can say I wish I had discovered it 5 years before then or 2 years before then, but I just see it as, I'm glad I discovered it, period, and that I did it, and that I'm continuing to do it.
So is there a question here that you wish that we had asked? And if so, what would it be?
No, again, it's different being on this side of things, so I'm just pretty open. So fire away. I don't know that I have a particular question I wish you would ask me. So whatever you want to talk about.
Okay,
so
we get some interesting answers out of that one. So because some people are bursting to talk about something that we haven't touched on, so it's always good to check.
No, this is great. I see this very much as just a conversation. So.
Perfect. Well, we're going to switch it up here, and James is going to bring you into a speed round.
Yes.
Oh, great.
This is always fun. Of course, we don't prepare you for this.
Okay.
But being the actor that you are and the experience that you have all around, I think you'll be fine. 10 quick questions for you, John. Number 1, Windows or Mac?
Mac. I was a Windows user for years. I mean, being in law in corporate America, and switching to Mac was like a breath of fresh air. No, I'm serious. And no offense to PC users, I probably wouldn't be able to do half the things I do now with media if I didn't have my MacBook. So
I think the way that he answered that, James, is like the perfect way to make us want to try to do the switch. Everything else has been a bit of a battle, but that was eloquent.
And believe me,
iPhone or
I've used both. I have a desktop. You know, it's funny. I'll tell you, I have a desktop PC, and the only thing I use that for now is my taxes. So I see the PC now. It's like, you know, and then the Mac is where I do all the fun stuff. So
there you go. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Cat or dog person?
You know, I love both. I actually get along very well with both cats and dogs. If I had to pick one, I'd probably, the edge might go to dogs, but I actually love all animals. I think they're wonderful.
We'll go with that. Most recently read book?
Oh, gosh. Most recently read book. I read a lot, so I'm trying to think if there's one in particular. Oh, yes. Modern Romance, Aziz Ansari.
Favorite vacation spot?
Favorite, Oxford, England. I spent a summer there after my junior year in college doing a study abroad, and I went back to revisit right after the bar exam.
Are you a techie or non-techie?
I would say I'm a techie, but I'm a little bit of a late adopter. So I'm not the first person to run out and get the latest shiny new object. But yeah, I do try to keep up, and I use a fair amount of tech in my day-to-day.
Favorite success quote?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to say a quote by Wayne Gretzky. I'm going to paraphrase it. I think it was something to the effect that good hockey players play to where the hockey puck is. Great hockey players play to where the hockey puck is going to be.
There you go.
I like that one.
What's a tool that you use every day online that you would absolutely hate to live without?
I'm going to go with, and these are two very simple ones, notes and reminders on my iPhone. I know there are a lot more sophisticated apps that will do the same thing, and they have a lot more bells and whistles, but I find those two, they're just quick and dirty, and they work.
What do you do for fun?
Oh, movies, dining out with friends, you know, kind of the standard typical type of stuff. Hiking.
Number 10. What's the most rewarding thing that you've been able to do for someone because of your podcast?
Oh, yeah. You know, one of the things that I will say, and this goes back to what I talked about earlier about relationship building, is that I'm able to connect with fellow podcasters. And as I've been able to get really amazing guests, I've been able to help support my fellow podcasters as well as help promote what the guest is doing, you know, in terms of their business or their career by making those introductions. And so I love doing that. I love, you know, I'm all about, you know, sharing. And, you know, if I have an amazing guest who I think is going to be a great fit for a fellow podcaster, I have no qualms about, you know, making that introduction and making that connection.
Terrific. Tell us, John, where can our podcasting friends learn more about yourself? Where can they get subscribed to your show? And any products or services that you'd like to talk about and share?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the website is bemovingforward.com. And that's also all of our social media handles fall under that. I'm actually working on right now, I just finished it. It's in beta, is a 5-module, 90-video public speaking course. It ties in everything I've done in my career, and I'm hoping to have that launched within the next month or so. And one other announcement, and so this is the first place where I'm announcing this. So Kristen is actually going to be departing and spinning off her own podcast, which is really exciting. So as of this summer, she's going to be launching a podcast that exclusively on personal development, personal growth, wellness. And so watch for that this summer. And I'm going to be continuing on as the full-time host of Moving Forward.
Very exciting. Any final thoughts or words of encouragement for those who are considering starting a podcast of their own?
Yeah, absolutely. Just do it. Absolutely. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, the barriers to entry for starting a podcast are fairly low. It's one of the most low-cost media that you can get into, and it's just continuing to grow. And we're seeing so many great new shows. I mean, just even in the time that I've done Moving Forward, I've seen so many phenomenal podcasts that have launched. And if you want to do it, just do it, and don't let any doubts or fears hold you back. Think about, again, what you're passionate about. Think about the message that you want to share with an audience, especially that one listener who may need to hear what it is you have to say or what you have to share.
That's wonderful. That's great advice. John, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you for sharing your personal story. Thank you for being so generous in your personal knowledge and sharing, of course, all your podcasting knowledge and your experiences.
Oh, thank you. James, Kimberly, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And to our podcasting friends, once again, I encourage you to check out John Lim and the Moving Forward podcast on both iTunes and at bemovingforward.com.
If you're wondering what it takes to develop a profitable show of your own, James has put together a special report just for you, where he lays out the 12 core elements of the No Fail podcast. You can download it for free for a limited time at podcastingmastery.com/nofail. And to our podcasting friends, a reminder, if you have your own podcast or a podcasting tool that you want us to feature here on the show, simply send us the details to feature me at podcastingmastery.com, and we may do exactly that.
And again, if there's something that John mentioned here that you missed, do keep in mind that we do keep all of the show notes for you, including links to everything John talked about. And you can find the show notes for this episode at podcastingmastery.com/PM031. Kimberly, thank you so much. John, you are awesome. And to all of our podcasting friends, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Podcasting Mastery.
Thanks for joining us in the Secret Beach Hut studio. If you are ready to start your podcasting adventure and to learn the secrets of creating a profitable podcast, James Martell has boiled it down for you to the 12 core elements of the No Fail podcast in his most recent free report. Available for a limited time at podcastingmastery.com/nofail. But don't wait, this report won't be free for long. So be sure to grab your free copy today to learn the secrets of podcasting your way to a stress-free lifestyle at podcastingmastery.com/nofail.